Hello, this is Silky, and this is From Grief to Love. Today, I wanted to have a quick chat about the stuff that other people say. So, that our well meaning friends and family can sometimes say, and why that is, and what to do with that. So, first, let me go back a step because our society is not really good with dealing with death and grief. Our Western society, we don't really have a clue how to do that. If we were to go back a few hundred years, even, we would have been living in a smaller village, and there, everything, birth, marriage, illness, death, was all part of the village life. It was all very much part that everybody kind of like grew up with very much. And kids just learn from a very young age that all of that was part of life. Whereas today, when somebody gets very unwell and is terminally ill, they are usually in the hospital, in an ICU unit, in a hospice, whatever. And the kids, yeah, they're usually allowed to visit the grandparents while they're in hospital, but once they kind of go to an ICU unit or to a hospice, quite often it's like, oh, better keep the kids away, blah, blah. And if the kids are lucky, they're allowed to go to the funeral. But sometimes people also think it's better for the kids not to go to that. But of course, what that leads to is that as a society, we basically are completely illiterate on how to deal with death and how to deal with grief and grieving. So, in our Western society these days, nobody really has the skills. We just don't know until such point where part of our shared humanity is that death and grief will affect every single one of us at some stage. And then all of a sudden, we're like, oh, we get it now. But before that, people don't really have the resources. It's they just don't know how to deal with it. And then their best friend or a close friend or a co-worker of them is grieving, but they don't know what to do. And then, of course, the other thing is that everyone has been kind of like trained to be helpful. Everybody has been trained to be kind and to do the right thing. And part of doing the right thing is the attempt to make people that they care about feel better. Well, unfortunately, when somebody is grieving, nothing they can say is ever going to make you feel better. The best that you can hope for is really to not make it worse. So then, of course, but they don't know that, right? So then, if they want to make it better, then they end up saying stuff that kind of really jars with you, like when they say, oh, at least the person is not suffering anymore, or at least da 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 da. Now, when somebody is grieving, nothing good was ever said after at least, unless it was the person themselves who are grieving. They can say that in an attempt to make themselves feel better, but nobody else is allowed to say that. But nobody knows that. So they will say stuff like that. Just be prepared for it. The other thing is that they also sometimes they're so scared to say the wrong thing, so they say nothing. They don't even mention your loved one's name anymore. They don't share any stories of your loved one, which for a lot of people jars even more with them because your loved one still needs to be part of your memories. So then, but they're scared to mention their name for fear of making you feel worse or for reminding you as if you wouldn't be thinking about it all the time anyway. But again, they don't really know that. So the more you share stories or the more you mention your loved one's name, and then to people that you trust, you can actually even say, actually, if if something happens and it reminds you of my loved one, then please tell me, share the story. Yes, I might cry a bit, but that's okay because it is all part of keeping their memory alive. So I just wanted to share today why so often things, get said that just really jar with your inner experience. But it very much is that we just don't have the tools, we don't have the resources. Unfortunately, in Western society, we don't really, you know, have learned how to help people who are grieving, which is part of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I've got Grieve to Love, so that I can raise overall awareness on how to help people who are grieving. Because anybody who's grieving actually needs somebody to walk next to them without judging them, because there is no right or wrong way to grieve. So thank you, and see you next time at From Grief to Love. Bye.